on round three of Battlegrounds.
The law says this, the law says that. Your morals say a lot of different things. And
But
so
ain't y'all supposed to protect and serve? I mean, if I'm wrong, it's called protect and serve. Is I'm wrong with that? Because you put me, but we getting killed. We getting shot in the head. We unarmed people. We getting shot in the head. You using deadly force, but you're supposed to be protecting and serving. Because at the end of the day, is I know my rights, and I have seen the officer pull my son over and put him out the car because he said he looks suspicious. That's that bullshit.
Andrea, now let's talk about your situation with your son. And
Yes.
not dismissing whether it was right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the leverage that officers have in situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nuances to people being stopped, people being pulled over, and things that nature, and what an officer sees. There's a lot that goes into it. So I like to speak to try to tell people that being suspicious, yes, is a legitimate reason to stop and talk to someone. The law allows officers to do that. But to also information man's point is that it can be rooted in bias. It can be rooted in prejudice. It can be rooted, and it can be disingenuous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be 100% lawful. And
Mm-hmm.
so, with that being said, if you know that there are different variables, unfortunately, policing has historically had a is rooted in racist practices against black people. It's hard for some black people to see that they're actually being stopped by a legitimate reason, right?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes that is the case. And
Mhm.
and the reason why I always explain it that way is because if you as an individual are being stopped by an officer and the officer has 100% legal justification to do so, but you in your mind think that he does not, and you act based off of thinking that you're not supposed to be stopped, you could then be escalating a situation in a direction where it doesn't need to go. The problem is you won't know if an officer is being honest or if he is lying, about you being suspicious, or you match the description of somebody else. You're not going to know. You're not going to know in that moment. So I always tell people that it's not worth the risk, right, of escalating a situation, because
Mhm.
I have been every time, I won't say every time, plenty of times have stopped people for legitimate reasons of suspicion, or someone had called the police on them, or they matched the description of a person we were looking for, right? Say they had dreads, gold teeth, wife beater, right? White tank top at the gas station for doing XYZ. And I stopped someone who matches the description 100%. And that was not the person. And so this does happen. And so everything always comes down to how we communicate, how we handle or how we address the situation. So I always tell people to it's always in our best interest to be patient, know our rights so that you know when an officer is overreaching, but also not to get emotional in a situation because you don't know. The best thing you could do is if you feel like or you suspect that an officer is abusing his or her power, or that they are profiling you, you ask for a supervisor, right? You cannot hold court on the side of a road with an officer because it's always going to be that officer's word over yours initially. And so I always tell people to be patient, and take your time. And if it does come out that the officer did abuse your rights or was racially profiling, then there's a way to go about handling that administratively. You will never win fighting a cop in the moment. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's not safe to do that, unfortunately.
Yes, I understand that. And my son is 23 years old. We have we have been teaching him, put your hand on the wheel, don't make. But the thing is, I found it so funny that he's black, big, and tall, but yet and still he's sitting out for a traffic ticket. He's sitting out of his car because he's suspicious. And the only reason I'm able to roll up because I rolled up on the scene because I was going to the gas station, and then I'm looking like, while my son who's not, it was got no criminal record, no criminal nothing. He's sitting out of his car. Give him a ticket and let him go on his way. But you got him sitting out his car, and you're training too. Now I'm irritated because you're training, because I'm like, don't you train on the fly at the office, not at the in the scene? And he said, well, I'm training right now. I'm like, oh God, please.
Oh,
And
he had a rookie officer with him that he was training,
yes, yes,
FTO. So
yes. So
what they stop your son for, if you don't mind me asking?
what did he stop him for? Did he give him a ticket? I think I made a fuss that he didn't get no ticket because another man came up and said we are hypersensitive because two black boys got killed a couple weeks ago, and they
Okay.
got shot. They got shot unharmed. And so I said, look, I'm scared for my own damn son. We hypersensitive out here
Were they
because
shot
y'all
by
shoot
those
first
two?
and ask questions.
Were they shot by the police or shot by just it was another person? Those two
That
that
was shot
you.
by the police. That was shot by the police,
Oh,
but
okay.
drug enforcement. So I said we are hypersensitive because y'all shoot first and ask questions later. That's how y'all get down, and I know how y'all get down. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about y'all. Y'all shoot first, and then you want to ask some damn questions. And I'm not trying to be rude, Nathan, but
No,
that's
you
how I
good.
feel about y'all. That's how I feel about y'all police. You shoot first, and then you want to ask some damn questions about what really happened. And so we hypersensitive because these two black boys got killed, and it's just killed. It's killed like they ain't nobody. And we have black sons, and we don't want to lose our son. I do believe that y'all should have more training. I believe y'all should have a psychiatric evaluation. I believe when you shoot somebody, you should not be back on the scene. You should not be back working. I think you go see a therapist. I think it's some things y'all are at a high risk job, and it's high risk for your family. I understand that, and I have sympathy for y'all. But I do thinking y'all should have more training. Your officer should stay in shape. I do think that y'all should have a psychiatric evaluation, and I do think you should be on the booths in the community, because when you in the community, you will know your people, and then when you know your people, you might get some things out of them. When you're not, I even told the officer, I told the officer, if y'all is on the boots, y'all might know your community. You think I'm gonna tell you if I see a drug dealer? No, I ain't
Wait,
telling
wait,
your
wait, wait. Now I'm gonna shine on you. Saying under boots, you got to get your colloquialisms right. Boots on the ground.
okay, boots on the ground. If y'all on the beat and know your community, we might feel
Well,
a little more to you. We might
well,
you,
well,
we
so
might know stuff.
let me stop you there. You
Uh-huh.
know, I like how you're able to do this multitask, stroke the hair, throw the hands back, twist. I'm like, shit.
Yo, there's
Yeah,
I
yo,
can't
son,
even. I
there's
can't
a
even
bald,
have my hand and
there's a
rub my
bald,
stomach at the same
yo,
time.
yo, Nate, there's a bald Brazilian lady somewhere tied up in somebody's basement right now on account of that.
Facts, facts. Mommy got the Hawaiian silky going strong right now. Listen, to your point, there's a policing on my channel. I talk about solutions and I talk about things that need to be done.
Uh-huh.
Policing has gotten so disconnected from their objective. Earlier, you said law. You said protect and serve.
Yes.
That's a marketing ploy. That's not true. That's
Okay,
absolutely
it's
not
not.
true. It's not. No,
Okay.
it's not.
Okay.
It's a bad marketing ploy that should have never been issued out. Policing is about law enforcement, and you can't protect and serve until you can enforce the law.
thank you for
And
saying.
Mm.
and to be honest, the courts have ruled that police are not responsible for your safety. This is why we need to reduce police encounters by removing officers from responding to about 70 to 80% of the type of calls that they're being dispatched to. To be completely honest, we're overly involved with citizens, in my personal opinion, and we should be reserved for things that require a hammer and not things that require a scalpel, right? And there lies the biggest issue with law enforcement. And to your point in reference to community involvement, we've gotten detached from that, to the
Mhm.
point to where, so one of my reform ideas is in reference to actually requiring officers during the week, during their work week, to work in a non uniform capacity in the community, volunteering in the community. That is a work day, right? The
Mhm.
only way you could pull this off and give officers more training and community service work. They need to do it and get paid to do it. These officers need to get paid to do community work. That's part of their job, to interact with the community. You have to reduce the type of calls they go to. We get called to do all of society's issues, and that's not what officers are trained for. And to be honest, if we trained officers more for what they should be required to do and less from what they should not be required to do, we could focus on more life-saving tactics, like, of course, hand-to-hand combat. For example, you have officers in other countries like England, Finland. They don't kill as many people during their encounters. They disarm people with knives and bats and shovels. Over here, we just shoot you, right? The law allows us to shoot you if you have any type of weapon and you pose any type of imminent danger to an officer. And use of force goes based off of if you can provide any great bodily harm or death. So you don't have to be you don't necessarily have to try and kill me, but if whatever you're doing can cause me great bodily harm, the law allows me to use lethal force. So, when we start looking at the law, we start looking at how officers are trained, officers have gotten too comfortable using deadly force to answer less lethal issues. Some officers won't get punched in the face. They'll shoot you before they get punched in the face, right? And so again, the problem is we have coddled officers in this country. Officers have gotten too comfortable being subpar, and citizens have coddled them. Police officers are this country's golden boy in a sense, and because of that, we have created a lot of weak officers because they're not being held accountable when they make mistakes. They're not being addressed when they are unable to deal with suspects. For example, in this case here with Patrick, he was unarmed initially. How did he get the officer's taser? Right. So that right there is a testament to how poorly trained the officer was. I can show you, matter of fact, I have a video on my channel right now showing you what my training looked like. I was trained by 2 Marines. We had to get pepper sprayed. Then you had 2 officers, 2 trainees, 2 rookies that would try to take your weapon. You had to maintain your weapon for 60 seconds and you couldn't give it up. They would tie us up, put us in a trunk. We had to get ourselves out. We had real training. They pepper sprayed us. We had to go through handcuffing. We had to handcuff somebody, pepper sprayed, and shoot our weapon, pepper sprayed. But this my training is not the same training other departments get. I think, and the misconception that the people have is that they believe we're all the same. And I tell people that all police officers are not created equal. All police departments are not created equal. That's the greatest misconception, because at the end of the day, there's 18,000 police departments, and each one of them operate as their own entity, meaning they run it they run it the way they want to run it, and that is a problem. My department, you messed up, you're going to prison, But then I hear some cases, case in point, like in Los Angeles, you got departments that are so big that it's so easy to have corruption because it's hard to turn over every rock. You can't see everybody. It's hard to manage. Large departments tend to have the most corruption, or departments in these rural towns and small cities that nobody ever goes to. Those are the departments with the worst problems. And because they're out of the eyes of the citizens, they're out of the eye of the media, and it's easy to brush things under the rug. You got generations of, my daddy's daddy was a cop, and my cousin, and it's so easy to keep a secret amongst family, right? And so there are a lot of issues, and I think sometimes the problem is the citizens see a problem on the outside. I see the root of the problem because I've been on the inside. So you might see the surface, I see the root. And so my reform goes towards the root to fix the bigger issue, so that it's a domino effect to actually clean up the profession as a whole. To your point, and what Information Man said earlier, he talked about the mindset, and he's right. Human nature, the problem is every officer is different. And so even when you look at a person, the best way to understand the officer that you're dealing with, you have to know where the officer was born, who the officer's friends are, how that officer was raised, what their parents look like, what they studied in school. You got to know the officer's religious beliefs. Why? Because an officer, or I would say a person, filters their job through the lens of their experiences. To Information Man's point, he's absolutely correct. You know, and so how do you measure that? You can't. How do you hire for that? You cannot. So what you can do is make sure that when officers abuse their rights, abuse their authority, that they're punished properly. And therefore you get people into the mindset of, you know, regardless of what my personal beliefs are, regardless of how I feel about a person's skin color, I care more about my freedom. I care more about my livelihood. I care more about my family than my racist ideologies, right? And because at the end of the day, there has to be something that an officer is putting up for risk, you know. And if there's no fear of discipline, then people get away with doing things they have no business doing.
I agree with you.